Unit 1. Abandon. They were accused of abandoning their own principles.
Abbreviation. DR is the written abbreviation of doctor.
Ability. The health centre serves all patients, regardless of their ability to pay.
Abnormal. They have an abnormal interest in drinking.
Aboriginal. They managed to wipe out the entire Aboriginal population.
Absorb. Plants absorb carbon dioxide. Have you absorbed all the details of the plan? She was absorbed in her thoughts.
Abstract. He was asked to make an abstract of the novel. Human beings are the only creatures capable of abstract thought. Abstract. Your problem is that you can't abstract the important points from the lectures. His imagination so abstracted him that his name was called twice before he answered.
Abuse. Drug and alcohol abuse contributed to Peter's early death. I never expected that he would abuse the trust I placed in him. People who are abused as children often turn into child abusers themselves.
Academic. He possessed no academic qualifications.
Academy. Her husband is now working in the Chinese Academy of Sciences. This thesis deals with the functions of the Academy in modern society.
Accelerate. The car accelerated to overtake the bus. They use special chemical substances to accelerate the growth of crops.
Access. Access to the papers is restricted to senior management. Access is by means of a small door on the right.
Acclaim. The new technology was acclaimed as a medical breakthrough.
Accommodate. The island was used to accommodate child refugees. Her eyes took a while to accommodate to the darkness.
Accompany. Children under 14 must be accompanied by an adult. The disease is accompanied by sneezing and fever.
Accomplish. How were they able to accomplish so much so quickly?
Accomplishment. The accomplishment of this policy goal took 6 months. Cutting the budget was an impressive accomplishment.
Account. I believe you gave a very good account of what happened. I would like to open an account with you. Take something into account. We'll certainly take your feelings into account. Account for something. How do you account for the dent in the car? Computer software accounts for some 70% of our range of products.
Accumulate. Fat tends to accumulate around the hips and thighs.
Accurate. It is difficult to get accurate figures on population numbers.
Accuse. He was accused of robbery.
Accustom. It'll take time for me to accustom myself to the changes.
Achieve. She eventually achieved her goal of becoming a professor.
Acid. These oranges are very acid. When she spoke, her tone was acid. Vinegar is an acid.
Acknowledge. Both defendants refused to acknowledge the authority of the court. We wish to acknowledge the support of the university. Tom acknowledged her presence by a brief glance.
Acquaintance. He has a lot of business acquaintances, but very few real friends. He got the job through his acquaintance with the president.
Acquire. The college acquired a reputation for very high standards. He spent years acquiring his skills as a surgeon.
Acquisition. Their team was devoted to the acquisition of new sites for the further development of their firm. The Art Society is holding an exhibition of recent acquisitions.
Acute. The fish's sense of smell is very acute. An acute attack of appendicitis.
Adapt. The children are finding it hard to adapt to the new school. Many children buy books after they have been adapted for television.
Addict. He was addicted to chocolate.
Address. He took out his pen and wrote down his name and address. She gave an address to the Royal Academy. She addressed the letter and stuck a stamp on it. You will have to address your complaints to the head office.
Adequacy. The adequacy of treatment with antibiotics has been tested.
Adequate. Her performance was adequate, but lacked originality. The company has yet to provide an adequate explanation for its actions.
Adhere. The eggs of these fish adhere to plant leaves. We adhere to the principles of equal rights and freedom of expression for all.
Adjacent. We stayed in adjacent rooms.
Adjust. My parents had trouble adjusting to living in an apartment.
Administer. The territory had been administered by South Africa. The test was administered fairly and impartially.
Administration. We're looking for someone with experience in administration. The problem has been ignored by the Nixon administration.
Admire. I've always admired her paintings. We stopped halfway up the hill to admire the view.
Admission. Admission to the exhibition will be by invitation only. The court may interpret your silence as an admission of guilt. They would charge 5 yuan admission.
Admit. He admitted his guilt. He admitted his mistake. He admitted his guilt. Mistake. Only ticket holders will be admitted into the stadium.
Adolescent. The party was full of spotty adolescents. He's so adolescent sometimes.
Adopt. California has adopted a tough stance on the issue. Congress finally adopted the law after a 2-year debate. The couple are unable to have children of their own, but hope to adopt.
Adore. She adored her sister. People will adore this film.
Adult. Some children find it difficult to talk to adults. He lived most of his adult life in Scotland. The film is rated R for language and adult themes.
Advance. In advance. He arrived half an hour in advance. Remarkable advances have been made recently in medicine. We have advanced greatly in our knowledge of the universe.
Advantage. One of the many advantages of living in New York is that you can eat out at almost any time of day.
Adventure. She had some exciting adventures in Egypt.
Adverse. They received a lot of adverse publicity about the changes.
Advertise. We decided to advertise our car in the local newspaper. He has always advertised his willingness to talk to the press.
Advocate. She is a passionate advocate of natural childbirth. He was the advocate for the defence in that case. Advocate. Extremists were openly advocating violence.
Aesthetic. From an aesthetic point of view, it's a nice design. The chair may be aesthetic, but it's not very comfortable. One of the central questions in aesthetics is whether beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or whether there is something within an object itself which makes it beautiful.
Affect. We were all deeply affected by her death.
Affection. She had little affection for him and certainly didn't love him. He tried to win her affections by bringing her flowers.
Affirm. The suspect affirmed that he had been at home all evening.
Affirmative. She gave an affirmative answer to his question. He did not feel very affirmative about what was happening.
Affluent. They both come from relatively affluent families.
Agenda. The government set an agenda for constitutional reform.
Aggravate. Attempts to restrict parking in the city centre have further aggravated the problem of traffic congestion.
Aggregate. The smaller minorities got an aggregate of 1,327 votes. Aggregate. Sheila's earnings from all sources aggregated $100,000.
Aid. He has been granted legal aid.
Alarm. She looked round in alarm. The alarm went off.
Albeit. He accepted the job, albeit with some hesitation.
Alcohol. I never touch alcohol in any form. Most wines contain between 10% and 15% alcohol.
Alien. It's a country that has had an alien government and an alien language imposed on it by force. On arrival in the United Kingdom, you must report to the Aliens Registration Office.
Alienate. All these changes to the newspaper have alienated its traditional readers.
Allege. The two men allege that the police forced them to make false confessions.
Alleviate. This money should alleviate our financial problem.
Allocate. $1 million was allocated for disaster relief.
Allowance. While he was at college, his parents gave him such a small allowance that he had to earn extra money working in a restaurant. When I go abroad, I hardly ever use all my duty-free allowance.
Alter. Her face had not altered much over the years.
Alternative. I had no alternative but to report him to the police. Have you any alternative suggestions?
Altitude. We are currently flying at an altitude of 10,000 meters.
Amateur. It was a very amateur performance.
Amaze. John amazed his friends by suddenly getting married.
Ambiguous. The language in the minister's statement is highly ambiguous.
Ambition. His ambition is ultimately to run his own business.
Ameliorate. Foreign aid is badly needed to ameliorate the effects of the flood.
Amend. The defendant later amended his evidence.
Ample. You'll have ample opportunity to ask questions after the talk.
Amuse. At school she would always be devising games to amuse her classmates.
Analogy. She drew an analogy between childbirth and the creative process.
Analyze. The cell samples are analysed by a lab.
Analysis. Further analysis of the data is needed.
Ancestor. There were portraits of his ancestors on the walls of the room.
Ancient. He came from an ancient Catholic family.
Announce. It was announced that the Prime Minister would speak on television that evening. He announced to his wife that he was leaving.
Annoy. You're just saying that to annoy me.
Annual. The Jazz Festival has become an annual event.
Anticipate. Sales are better than anticipated.
Anticipation. They waited, filled with nervous anticipation.
Anxiety. It can help if you discuss your anxieties with someone.
Apologize. I apologize for my late arrival.
Apparatus. The new piece of apparatus was used in the experiment.
Apparent. It soon became apparent that we had a major problem.
Appeal. All the organisations involved have sent urgent appeals to the government asking for extra funding. All prisoners have a right of appeal. The programme has a very wide appeal. She is not happy with the decision and plans to appeal. Farmers have appealed to the government for help. The idea of working abroad really appeals to me.
Appearance. The two sisters were remarkably alike in appearance. The fight was soon stopped, thanks to the prompt appearance of the police.
Append. The results of the client's survey are appended to this document.
Appendix. Christine had to go into hospital to have her appendix out.
Appetite. Sudden decrease in appetite is sometimes a sign of illness. Paul has no appetite for hard work.
Applaud. The children applauded at the end of the song. These changes will be applauded.
Apply. I've applied for another job. He wants a job in which he can apply his foreign languages. This chart no longer applies.
Appointment. I'd like to make an appointment to see one of the doctors this morning. He congratulated me on my appointment as editor.